Hello everyone, you're listening to Financial Marketing Secrets with Jenesis Gems, and I'm Jenny Pearce. I'm very excited to be interviewing a group of people that I've had the pleasure of meeting a few times now. I've known Terry Johnson for quite a while through different industry arrangements, like different industry communities, things like that. And he's been on my radar to interview for some time, but we could never quite make it work. But we've pulled it together and we have got Mia, Terry, and Ben on the podcast today. And I'm super excited. Welcome, guys. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Jenny.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Jenny.
No problem. Well, let you get to know the Johnson family that are part of Keyman Financial Services. I should say there's only 2 children on the screen in front of me right now. So I'm not sure if there's any budding people coming into the business, but let me introduce you to Ben. Ben, tell me about you and your role in Keyman Financial Services.
Sure, Jenny. And just to your point, we do actually have younger sisters who worked in the business for, I'm going to say, a month in terms of actually doing work. And we soon let them go is the term that I will use. But we do love them as much as we possibly can as older siblings.
That's such a sibling thing to say.
But in terms of me, so I've been working in the business since 2017. It might have actually been late 2016. At the time, I was studying an undergraduate at Macquarie University that had nothing to do with financial planning. It was a business degree, and I will let the record show I got a 51 in my finance 1A unit. So at the time, I did not think I was cut out for anything in the financial services industry. But I've come to learn that there are actually calculators that can do 95% of what I was learning in that unit. And then just one day came about and Dad, pulled me aside and said, all right, I think it's time you came and worked for me. And, I pondered on it for a little bit and had a couple of days to think, man, I really don't want to work with my dad. I don't know if it's for me, but I actually reflected on some family friends that we have. And I like to tell this story because the member of that family, apparently I'm named after, but the reason why I bring it up is that person had the opportunity to join his dad's business, which was also a financial planning practice. And just looking at him and how his life is and everything like that, I realized, this is something that I really want to commit some time to see if I enjoy. And, Dad was so kind that he kind of said, look, if you don't like it, it's fine. You can walk away, I won't take personal offense to it. But ever since that day, coming on, I haven't looked back. And as of last Monday, actually, I'm fully authorized now. So I've officially stepped into the shoes of Dad.
Oh, wow. That's so huge. Well, they're big shoes to fill.
Extremely big.
Oh, that's so cool. Congratulations. That's marvelous news.
Thanks so much.
Okay, sliding to the next seat. That is Mia. Welcome, Mia. Let me say it's so refreshing to see a female face on the other side of the camera right now. Tell us a little bit about your journey so far and your role in the business.
Thanks, Jenny. Well, I definitely ended up in the industry by complete accident. I had zero intention of ever working with my dad, let alone in this industry. So after high school, I actually studied communication and international studies. So something very, very opposite to the financial services industry. But what ended up happening was I went overseas on exchange for uni. And because I was going overseas, I had to quit my part-time casual jobs at that point. And of course, when I came back, I needed a job, and just so happened that Dad needed a hand with just admin around the office. And I jumped at the opportunity, and 5 years later, here I am, almost authorized, 99% of the way there. But yeah, I'm so thankful. I definitely so happy that, my career's ended up the way that it has. There's no industry I'd rather be in all honesty.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. I would have to say that communication is a very large part of a financial advisor's role. So perhaps there's some merit in your madness. Leaping into financial services is not for the faint-hearted.
That's for sure.
So it leads me to the head honcho. The man that's probably been keeping the doors open and making sure that Keyman Financial Services has impact, and that's you, Terry Johnson. Welcome.
Thanks, Jen. It's so great to be here. There's actually more to that story with Mia that she didn't mention. So she was about 2 weeks into working for me, and she didn't have a clue what we did. So I had this trauma insurance claim paid, and I think I'm one of the few advisors that still, when possible, we get the check delivered to our office. I set up an appointment. I put Mia in the car. We went over to Northern Beaches and we sat down with this client, and they literally had no idea what we're there for. They probably thought it was more paperwork to do with the claim. Anyway, we're sitting around the table, and this client, they were in a dire financial position, about to lose their business. Their house was half renovated, no income. And I put out a check for $650,000. He had a heart attack, which led to a triple bypass. And Mia, everyone's in tears around the table, and Mia's like, what the? She had no idea. So that's how I sneakily suckered her into the business. And then I think she really, truly understood what we did and how we give people the power to really just, change their life. So that was the way I snuck her into it.
Well, I think she took the bait. That's what I'm saying.
I definitely did. That's for sure. It was definitely like the light bulb moment for me, I think.
I think that's the truth, the true strength of financial advice is it's not actually about the calculator stuff. It is very much about that emotional bond, that emotional impact that you have when you literally, as you say, Terry, change people's lives. So let's not shy away from the fact that your business is nearly 28 years old. That's no mean feat. How have you done it?
Well, I've been in the industry for about 28 years. My company's been registered for 15 years. So Keyman Financial Services, I started that business 15 years ago. And but I actually started way before then. I started as a tied agent with Prudential back in the 90s.
Wow.
And it was a tied agency agreement. And I think I was only 21 or 22. And I was so bad at it, I almost starved to death. For the first 6 months, it was just brutal. And I always remember there's a bunch of the guys in the office there, and they're all pretty successful guys, and I could not get an appointment for life or death. Anyway, they're sitting there. I've got a telephone and a yellow pages, and they just stood there and watched me until I secured an appointment, and it was horrifying. It was so bad. So I went away and got a bit more life experience. I'm an electrician by trade, so I went back to the trade where I knew I could make some money to live, and then eventually I got back into the business in I think it was 1998, and you never look back. It's a tough old gig, but someone's got to do it, as they say.
Well, you must be doing something right. I think, to have two children follow you into the business is a great credit to you, and you should take a very big pat on the back for that. So well done to you.
Thank you, Jen.
Okay, let's so we've got the nuts and bolts. I want to do a little bit of a deeper dive into being a family business, because let's face it, it's not always easy working with your siblings, but sometimes it can be glorious. It just depends upon, I guess, the DNA, how it all works together. So I guess I'll start with you, Terry, because at the end of the day, you opened the door and you invited both Ben and Mia into the business. So share with me a little bit about, the process of becoming a family business.
Well, like the kids said, it was kind of, they needed some part-time work, and that's basically how they arrived into the business. But then very, very soon afterwards, I realized that these kids have a very special skill set, that they've got such a kind, genuine nature about them. And I started listening in on client phone calls and just the way they handled themselves and presented themselves. And I was having some staffing problems at the time, and just I think we're blessed. One thing led to the other, and like I said, a few tactical moves, like with Mia and Ben, where I gave him, his first week in the job, I gave him the power. He was looking after all the reviews, and a few days in, Ben said, "Dad, why are we doing it like this?" And I said, "I don't know. That's just the way we've always done it." And I think that was a fork in the road, where if I stood my ground and said, "No, mate, don't be smart. This, you're just new here. Just watch your step." But instead of that, that would be a pride-driven decision. But I said, "All right, mate. Well, if you reckon you can do it better, show me how to do it." And sure enough, he did. So that built enormous trust straight away with Ben's competency. and that was it. I think it's more about, it's about leaving your pride at the door and just working as a common unit, Jen. It truly is. And, it's just being kind to each other. I think we've never had an argument in 6 or whatever years it's been now. And we don't intend to either. And we've actually got, things in place to make sure we don't. We've got accountability to each other. We have proper formal meetings. We're always looking at the future, but more so it's all underpinned by who can we help in terms of charities and also clients. And I think it just all, molds us together.
Ben, so you walked in the door and all of a sudden were thrust into this situation of, here you're doing reviews, you're organising the reviews now. So tell me, thinking back to that first day, like, did you have a sense of what it was that Terry did, that the business did? And did you understand the impact of working in the business? Did you understand any of it?
Sure, Jenny. The first day on the job, the only thing that I knew about what Dad did actually came many, many years before, when I did a presentation in year 1 about it was what your hero did or something like that. And I did it about my dad, and I only remember saying the words superannuation. That's all I remember from that whole presentation. So my whole life, I thought my dad did something with the word super in it, and therefore that made him a bit of a hero. In terms of what we actually did, though, I had no idea. I remember very clearly, actually, we had an office in Parramatta, and I remember Dad sat us down in his office and there was a whiteboard, and he just wrote life insurance, TPD insurance, trauma insurance, income protection. And it probably took me and I, weeks and weeks to differentiate between income protection and TPD. I had no idea up until, you start talking to clients and you get a rhythm for how everything kind of works, and, your knowledge base kind of builds out. But I had no idea, Jenny, not a single clue.
It's so true, isn't it? Like, there, even, to this very day, I've been working in, Genesis is actually 17 years old and working in specialising in financial services for 15 years. And, it's not until my husband started working with me, helping me out in Genesis, that he went, I kind of now really understand what it's all about. Like, and particularly as, we have a daughter that's a financial advisor, and he said none of it made sense until we really sat down and explained it. So Mia, Dad obviously sideswiped you and got you hooked by delivering a much needed check to a client. But what was the thing that really made it, this is what I want to do for you?
Really, really good question. In all honesty, it was definitely that claim experience. So I feel as though kind of coming into the business, it was really all head knowledge at that point. I was learning about the different policy types and ownership structures and all of this, but in my opinion, it really became kind of heart knowledge when we took that check out to the client. And I think that's what kind of ignited the fire. So, I had an understanding of what my dad did, but I had no understanding of the power of what my dad did. So it was when I saw that in action and in a real life scenario that, I just thought, this is awesome. I really want in. This is just so cool.
Yeah, I tell you, when you see how the change that it makes to people, that's the stuff. It's it's just so addictive. It's because you know that it's not just a moment in time; it literally is changing their lives. So
no other business like it. I reckon, apart from the man who rings up and says, "Congratulations, you've won Powerball." This is actually effective when clients are at their lowest point of their lives. Man, it's a special skill set to manage the emotions and the expectations and everything else. And it's
you mentioned something there that's actually fairly important. That and what's quite relevant here is that not our young adults of today, and teenagers included, don't necessarily understand financial services, or they understand money, but they don't understand the credit. They don't understand debt, because the bank of mum and dad has been around for a period of time. And that's not to say, that's not a criticism, it's just an observation. But the thing that you mentioned, Terry, that I thought was really interesting was that, that having really good DNA, having really good core values, walking into the business and understanding that, this is my dad's business and this is my family's business, and, and we want to be part of that culture. So you work on building that culture with, you've had to really draw the team together. What did you consciously do to make sure that this wasn't just for the short term, that it is for the long term?
It's a great question, Jen. So it was, to me, I've had jobs in the past where you kind of promised ownership at some point in the future. Maybe if you're a good boy and you work really hard for the next 15 years, you might get a look in. But I didn't want that to be the case. And I saw an opportunity where my business could essentially succeed me. And I was surrounded by two incredible people with the right core values, like you said. And they're just, they were so genuine about wanting to love the business. I got them involved in MDRT really early on in the piece, so they learned more about, the human side of the industry, not just the numbers. And so from very early on, we started talking about succession. And it took them a while, but now they're on board, especially because they're getting married and stuff. They understand the blessing that they've been given. It's a pretty rare opportunity, and I think they're really grateful and appreciative of it. So their mission in life now is to make my life as simple as possible. And so,
I like that mission.
I love it. It's fantastic. But you know what, Janet? It's almost like I don't know if it could work in some families, because there's no greed. There's no, what can I get out of the business? What can the business give me? It's about, what can I contribute, and how can I help? How can I help reward Dad for all these, years and years of hard work? And geez, it's satisfying.
Yeah, that's so true. I think, that the team mentality, when it comes from a family background, you carry forth the family ties, but you also carry forth the bond and the values that you hold as a family. And that's really obvious to me. So, which leads me sort of, Ben, if we were to talk about, the flip into client engagement, and and I get that you're just now transitioning and all that sort of thing. So, having that client connection and building that client connection, was that something that came easily to you, or was it something that you felt you had to get your dad to help you with? Like, how did that come about?
Yeah, it's funny. We love telling this story, Jenny, because it's probably the polar opposite to what most people kind of think. I always remember, right, my very, very first outbound call that I made to a client. I'm like, young and arrogant. This is going to be easy. I mean, I used to work at Domino's Pizza, so I copped abuse on the phone 24/7, right? So I thought this will be a piece of cake. I just got a smile, and that kind of comes through in my voice, right? The client that I just so happened to call was a very, very tired truck driver who had just set himself down for his midday nap. And I'd woken him up probably 15 minutes into that nap. So my first client phone call was a very abusive one that went for probably 10 minutes of me not saying anything, but I was actively listening. And I will admit, I do believe a tear came down my eye at one point. But I always remember hanging up that call being, Dad, I don't want to talk to another client ever again. I'm telling you, Dad, do not make me do it. But you know what? It's really strange because Mia and I came into the business before provisional years were a thing, and before, there was a lot more, I guess, regulation in place. And so Dad was so kind to let us sit in on so many client meetings very early on. And although I was a little bit passive back then, we were just taking notes. We weren't really engaging too much. He always gave us the opportunity to speak some knowledge that we had to the client, whether it was, hey, Ben, tell them what trauma insurance is, or, tell them a claim story, whatever it was. And through that, you kind of develop this sense of confidence in talking to clients. And now, after being thrown in the deep end, Mia and I actually catch ourselves basically mimicking Dad, like we say the exact words that he has said in the past. And it's a really strange feeling. And I've said this to Mia before. Sometimes if I'm dealing with a client who, I feel like I'm a bit out of my depth with, or I'm a bit nervous, I actually imagine that I look like my dad, like I am my dad. And so I just say what he would say. And I think that kind of manifests, I think it's dad's God-given gift, that he can talk to anyone about anything. And I think that's how it comes through for us. So I don't think it can't really be quantified in terms of, what skill set or activities did your dad teach you to be better at client engagement. It just came from experiencing it, in real life scenarios.
He was there to catch you when you fall.
He absolutely was.
Storytelling, Jen, it's so critical to this business.
Yeah. Oh, true. Storytelling. Yeah, absolutely. I think that sometimes we forget, in a very transactional world where everything's about, you do this online, you do that online. We do forget that that's the stories that make us human. So, which is another whole discussion when you're talking about AI.
So true.
Yes.
I've had some very interesting discussions about that just over the last couple of days. So, Mia, just from your perspective, I'm interested to know your experience on your first client call, and how you see yourself fitting into the equation going forward.
Sure. Well, I think I definitely had it a lot easier than Benny did. My first client phone call was I literally was just answering the phones and taking messages. So I wasn't thrown into the deep end like Ben was, but I'd say what's probably helped me the most in kind of going from, just picking up the phone, taking messages, into conducting client meetings and running discovery meetings and fact finds and presenting advice and that type of, I guess, deeper work. What you guys were talking about before with the storytelling, I found that that's what takes all the pressure off, because you're not selling anything when you're telling a story. And I think I'm so grateful that, from the get-go, Dad always included us in, the claims process, because it's those claims experiences that I've lived through those experiences. I've seen, the process from the phone call of the diagnosis up until handing over a check. And I think that's what really shows clients that, wow, this is actually like the real deal. These people really know what they're talking about. And this isn't just something, that could happen. This is something that actually does happen all the time. So that's really, really helped me. And then probably the other thing, which I've really learned from observing Dad is, I remember when I first started making phone calls and interacting more with clients in more of the advice role, as opposed to just, admin kind of related tasks, I was always so nervous about starting the conversation. And the question that Dad always asks, which I continue to do every single time I talk to a client, is instead of going into product and asking them, all these fact-finding details, is just simply asking the question, what are you worried about? It's so simple, and it takes all the pressure off you to have to, think of 10 different questions off the top of your head, but you really let the client take leadership in that. And I think for me, it took a massive weight off my shoulders. And it's really, really helpful.
That's cool. That's a conversation starter for sure. I'm very impressed with that, actually, because we do sort of, in polite conversations, the first thing you do is say, how are you? Not actually anticipating it's almost rhetorical.
Yeah. But it's funny, Jenny, actually, because it's kind of changed. You ask that question and you either get one of two responses. One person legitimately tells you everything they're worried about, which is, in all honesty, probably 1 out of 10. Most other people say, well, I'm not worried about anything. Well, then the next question is, okay, well, tell me about your situation. And then they tell you what they're worried about inadvertently, They said, I've got a wife, I'm worried about that. I've got kids, I'm worried about that. I've got a mortgage, I'm worried about that. And it's like in either of those two scenarios, you end up with all of the information that you need basically to do our entire job.
Yeah, that's so true, because we do tend to, I am often one of the 1 in 10, by the way. I figure if you're going to ask me, I'm going to say, I'm not going to give you a, war and peace, but I'm going to tell you, because I think that's the world we live in. We kind of sort of put the veneer up, and I think it's more important to actually be honest. If you're not having a good day, say so. It's okay. You never know. The next part of the conversation may change direction for you. So, so part of our conversations in the past, Terry, have been obviously professional standards, education. You've been in the industry a very, very long time. And, there was this crossroads was, do I upskill, gain my additional education? And so I want to kind of talk about the lessons learned, obviously, taking on the additional education and managing a business was not an easy thing to do.
No, that's for sure. Yes, I was at that crossroads. I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago when the education standards came in and FASEA. And quite honestly, at that time, there was so much negativity around the industry. I mean, there were literally advisors committing suicide. It was ridiculous. And there's just so much uncertainty. And, we were made to feel like criminals, even though everything we did was with the absolute best interest. That shouldn't even be a law, because of course we do things in people's best interest. My God. Anyway, it got to the point where I was either in or out. And my options were put on a couple of VAs to help service the book, and I'll sit back and just cruise the rest of my life. I don't know, see how long that lasts, but it wasn't the right thing to do. Mia and Ben were involved, and they that's when we started having serious conversations about their longevity in the game. And once they said, yeah, we're in, that was it. I had to be degree qualified. So I sat the second ever FASEA exam sitting, which was an absolute nightmare. I felt like it was so bad. Like, I'm not kidding. Going back to those days, I'd never ever want to put anyone through that. It was terrible.
Did you have a physical exam, or did you do because of COVID, you had to do the online?
Yeah. I did the physical exam, and I never forget, I walked into the offices there in the city where the exam was, and you literally felt like you're a criminal. Like I had an electronic watch on. Like, I don't even know how to use the things, if I'm going to cheat with it, but they made me take it off. The guy next to me was coughing, so they took his tissues off him. It was disgraceful, just the treatment. There was no need for it. I saw old advisors in there in their 70s, just one finger typing. There was no way they were going to ever complete that exam. It was designed to set them up, essentially. And then with the degree, again, I had two choices. I could either just do it or not. And I dove straight in, and just it was hard. Like, I'm not kidding. Every Sunday afternoon when I felt like relaxing, I realized there was an assignment due or something. It just never ended. And at age 50, and I hadn't been to uni, so it was absolutely brutal for me. But I got through it. The actual subjects that I needed, which was insurance and estate planning, I high distinctions in, but the rest, what's the old saying? P's get degrees.
P's get degrees.
So whatever I had to do.
Always ask for a remark.
See, the roles actually flipped. You had two kids doing university that actually probably could help you now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it bonded us. It really did. It truly did, Jen. So that 18 months passed pretty quickly, thank God. And at the end of it, we each of us walked away with our financial planning degrees, and me and Ben got their other multiple degrees. And so from now on, the only thing I want to read is stuff that I want to read, not what I'm forced to read.
No recommendations for late night studying.
No.
So obviously, Mia and Ben, and whomever wants to answer this first, go for it. But you were both studying very different degrees, and then you flipped and you've gone into the Bachelor of Financial Services?
Graduate diploma.
Okay.
Yeah, fancy.
So you've done your graduate diplomas. So obviously you were able to take some credits and carry them over to the study that you've now completed?
I don't know about, no, you were finished already. It actually worked a little bit in my favor, actually. Sorry to jump in, Mia. I actually hadn't finished my undergraduate degree when all the laws changed. So the conundrum that I was kind of left with was I was in my final year of my Bachelor's of Business Leadership, and I was told that I had to now study an approved undergraduate degree to be giving advice. And the issue with that was that Macquarie Uni didn't offer any financial planning major. So I actually would have had to have changed complete degrees, which meant I was basically starting afresh. I could have brought some credits across, but it probably wasn't much. And so what I actually did was I pitched to Kaplan. I said, hey guys, look, I haven't finished my bachelor's. I'm going to very shortly. Can you take me on as like a bit of a special case where, I'm technically doing a higher degree than a bachelor's without having a bachelor's? And they said yes. And that actually covered a couple of units in my undergrad. So my final semester of uni was a bit more relaxed because I had those other units from my grad dip. So it worked out in my favor. But I mean, we had to do all 8, didn't we?
We did, yeah. And I didn't get any kind of credit or anything, I think, because my degree was so unrelated in any way. But yeah, in saying that, I'm really proud, especially of Dad, for how he just got it done without fuss, and now he's done with it. Like he really hit it head on. So Ben and I are super proud of him for that.
But you know what, Jenny?
I'm not sure about the no fuss. He looks like there was a lot of fuss going on.
Bibliographies that really got him.
Yeah. It's funny, you read so many pages and pages in those degrees, but looking back now, we actually legitimately learned a lot that has now started to manifest itself in how we give advice in our business. Like even doing the estate planning unit, now we're having really deep conversations about how we can embed estate planning in our business, and doing investments is one of the reasons why, I'm hoping to go into full financial planning shortly. Without those opportunities, we never would have experienced them in our day-to-day job. So I actually thought that was the most valuable thing, much aside from just ticking a box.
I think when you're younger, the learning experience is just a little bit different. But when you've not been in a form of study for such a long period of time, it's almost, it just feels like somebody's put you back at the start line.
Yeah. Well, you'd never been to uni.
The crazy thing was, Jen, all the experience I've got, you couldn't even bring that through in the essays because you can't reference yourself, number one, and the lecturer doesn't know who you are. So, it's so impractical. And I'm not bagging Kaplan; they were new to this as well. But man, it's just I would have preferred to honestly sit in front of an assessor and go through life case scenarios. Just interviews or whatever. That would have been much better for me.
Yeah. I think unfortunately it's been very challenging from an education standpoint. But at the same token, I think the lessons learned are that, as you say, Ben and Mia, is that what you now bring into your day-to-day existence in the business is, and along with all the mentoring, both, within the business with your dad, but externally, with, the various groups, MDRT, all the others, you're able to sort of manifest all that learning into actual experiences now.
Yeah,
so
sure
that's a bonus.
Yeah, for sure.
So I'm a little bit wondering what the future holds, because, you're both quite young and you've got your whole world in front of you and lots of life to live and marriages to have. So Mia, what does the future hold for you?
I think for myself at this point, so I'm very, very passionate about specialising in risk. I don't see myself going into holistic advice. I think if anything, I want to really go deeper into risk because I love it so much. And then I've definitely I'm starting to take a really keen interest in the estate planning side of things. So definitely looking into ways we can integrate that into the business. And then, of course, there's the claims advocacy side of things. So that's really kind of my, I guess, passion project, you could say, is we've actually got a side of the business that just handles claims. And that's really where I get, I guess, the most meaning out of my work. So definitely, I guess, looking at going down that track.
Yeah, well, obviously your dad could see the writing on the wall very early in the piece and he got you involved in claims nice and early.
Exactly.
What about you, Terry? What's the future hold for you? I mean, you're a young spring chicken at 51, aren't you? 51?
But Jen, it's funny, so my goal in life, like any dad, I suppose, is to want to help your kids, right? So we're in the process of, I guess it's a bit of a restructure. So Keyman Financial Services is a really well-established business. It's got, really good inflows and runs pretty smooth. So we like to complicate things around here. So we set up a separate business called Keyman Claims, and we each have ownership in that business, but Mia's is the key driver for that. So because of her passion for claims, she will, as an advocacy business, we're doing lots of pro bono charity work, claims work, sorry. And when the government kindly cut our income, you have to now charge for this stuff, whereas before we didn't have to. So like any business, you got to cover your costs. So that business is going really well, and that's Mia's baby. On the other side, Ben's setting up his the full financial planning offering, which is going to be called Keyman Wealth. Ben's now licensed, so that's his baby. He's well underway with planning all that out. And the next little operation is Keyman Legacy, which is an estate planning offering. So I've got all these little units, I suppose, where we've all got ownership in them. And the reason is because we'll feed off each other. You know, one client will feed multiple, will need different services within the business. But the key thing is, Jen, it's the ownership side, which these kids have bought into. If I just treated them like employees and just use them as income generators for myself, they wouldn't be here now. You know, there's thousands of businesses out there that will pay them twice as much as I pay them to do the same job. But it's the long-term ownership and the stability which they know is great for them.
It's important to have those conversations nice and early, Terry.
100%, Jen. And you know, it's so important because once you've got buy-in, everything changes. Your mindset changes from employee to I'm a business owner and this is going to be my future. So I better work hard and I better know this client very well because they're probably going to be my clients for years and years and years. And that's how really I built Keyman. You know, even when I was an employee working for a big company, I treated every single one of those clients like one day they would be mine. And sure enough, they were. I purchased that register of clients off the company and that's how I started up Keyman. So it really comes down to client focus.
Yeah, I think you mentioned something the other day to me, and I heard you mention it earlier on in our discussion. You mentioned you kind of got to leave your pride at the door, and that you know that when you sit at a table, everybody's an equal. That's been your philosophy?
Yeah, absolutely, Jen. I mean, again, you know, as a dad and I guess a business owner, how do you blend the two? How do you switch it off at nighttime, and how do you not let things interfere with business and family? Well, you know, again, it comes down to, I think there's in our industry, there's a lot of very big personalities, and there's no way they could do what we did because it's my way or the highway, right? Even to the kids, it's like that. It's my way or get out. I've built this thing and look at me, it's all me. But I took the opposite approach, and instead of it's all me, it was what can you teach me? They taught me everything. They systemized things, they automated things, they you know, they were like clones of me. And gosh, just so lucky. Very lucky.
I think you won the lottery. You don't need Powerball.
So lucky, Jen.
Ben, okay, so what's ahead for you?
Yeah, sure. As Dad and Mia mentioned, we're slowly launching a holistic planning arm. So that'll do, you know, everything from investments to super. And again, it was one of those things where I always thought financial planning was about age pensions and super and retirement planning. And I basically fell asleep every single time it came up, or it was just way too technical that, you know, there was just too much to know. So I was always hesitant to, you know, draw closer to it. And that was until I started to have a couple of client meetings with Keyman clients that, you know, I went into thinking they just needed help with their existing insurance, but it turned into almost a counseling session, you know, where they started telling you all of their worries and all of their dreams and their hopes. And I really started to understand how emotional, you know, money actually was for people. And I feel so blessed because, you know, I was raised very financially literate. You know, Dad always told me about, you know, being smart with your money and saving and investing from a very young age. And it was probably ignorance, but I'm coming to learn how many people didn't have that, and seeing how that's manifesting even in people's adult lives really kind of hit home. And, you know, ever since learning that and now being authorized, I just feel so called to be able to, you know, help people in that sense. And it's one of those things, like particularly with me with claims, is it seems to come naturally. You know, it doesn't feel like I have to try very, very hard to, I guess, communicate effectively in that sense. And I think you have to lean into the opportunities and I guess like the, you know, what comes natural to you.
See, what you remember, Ben, it's all about, like Jen said before, it's about how you talk to people. It's about your ability to tell stories, about how to get them talking about their goals, etc. So it's a people business.
Yeah.
And that's what you're really good at. Both of you are really good at it. The technical stuff can be done in the back office.
Yeah.
Right. Your job is to get the client buy-in and to get them dreaming and thinking about the future. And so
I think that actually raises a fairly good point, because, obviously university is very much about learning dotting the I's and crossing the T's and writing bibliography, bibliographies and all that sort of thing, and references and things like that. So, and we do tend to forget the emotional intelligence that is such a pivotal part of the client relationship, of the client experience. And I feel like that because of your family unit and again, your relationship with each other, but also, your experiences within financial services, it's allowed you to gain access to that emotionally, that EQ very, very early on. Very, very early on. And that's a rare thing. It's actually very, very rare. So well done to you guys. So it leads me to a question that I guess, Hark just mentioned by you, Ben, when you talked about, you were lucky because you were raised with fairly good financial literacy. That's not necessarily the norm, is it?
No, not at all.
No. What about you, Mia? Do you feel like we've got, as an industry, we've got to do a little bit more in that space?
Yeah, I think in all honesty, I think the industry is really, really strong technically and with compliance, but it's definitely the soft skills where I feel as though we fall short. And that's probably why Ben and I are so thankful for the fact that Dad got us involved in MDRT so early on, because that's kind of where, you'll never learn the emotive side of the business doing a degree. But when you get involved in things like MDRT and other committees and things we've been on, that's where we've learned that, as well as, of course, sitting in front of a client. That's what I'd say to that.
But one thing too, Jen, is, and we've always said this, between ourselves, is that, the cost to give advice is really high, but we never want to turn people down, from a revenue perspective. And there are so many people that, get referred to us or ask us for help, where in reality, it's going to cost us a lot of money to give you that advice. But Mia and I know that you're young, you have a mortgage and a family, you need the advice. And you can see, we almost get like our blood boiled when like young people either don't listen to us or we feel like we can't help them or whatever it is, because we know so strongly, that they need the advice. And like this afternoon, Mia and I are going to see some friends. We're literally probably going to make $0 out of this case. It'll be nothing, but we find so much joy and so much value in helping them understand, what the insurance is, what place does it play in their lives, and then from that, it just leads into so many other kind of conversations.
It's a bit of a balancing act, isn't it? Because we all want to help, and literally and I no doubt in my mind, Terry, over the years, you've had how many phone calls, Terry, can you help with this? And Jenny, can you help with this? And you some days, some weeks, it feels like there's this wave of, people to help. And it is, as a business, and, when you're trying to ensure longevity, it is a tough decision to make on who you can and you cannot help,
we talk about this often, Jen, but these clients, they will still be clients in 20 or 30 years' time when they've got a raging business and they've got, you know what I mean? So if advisors can only take their eye off the short-term profit, okay, but look at that client over a lifespan. It's incredible, not only in terms of revenue, but also just referrals that they can provide and just the asset value of your business, etc. So it's not always about the quick kill or, the break-even point. Sometimes you've got to give a little bit because it comes back in swaves later on.
Yeah. So Terry, from your perspective, I mean, you've been very blessed. You've got, a beautiful daughter and a strapping young man now working in your business, and the business looks like it's going to be doing some incredible stuff over the next 5, 10, 20 years. How do we get more of the Mias and Bens involved in advice?
Involvement. So it's number one. Firstly, I think when younger people start seeing the industry as an actual profession, which they will shortly in the next, 2 to 5 years, it will be should I be an accountant or should I be a financial planner or a lawyer, whatever. It'll be seen hopefully in the same view. And but then once the once the young person gets involved, starts their career, they need to buy into the industry, right? Get involved, volunteer for MDRT or the AFA or the FPA, whoever, just get involved. There's so many young associations around, what is it, XY? Is it one of them?
Ensemble.
Whatever, just get involved and learn to love the industry. It's not there purely as a paycheck. Get involved, and that's what will create the longevity.
Yeah. I feel like, if they see more of their own faces, then they're more attracted to it. But if you're only seeing, a certain style of face, then it tends to not want to be a place where you want to be. Would you agree?
Yeah, because the involvement relates to passion and passion for the industry. If you're not passionate about it, don't do the job, because there are trying times. It is a difficult business. There's ups and downs. There's good markets, there's bad markets, and good claims and bad claims. And you've got to be really steadfast in the industry itself, because it will always change. The next government will probably change things as well. So, it never ends. But to get passionate about. So for
you, Ben, how do we get more of the Bens coming and joining financial advice?
Yeah, it's really interesting, and it goes a bit, I guess practically, but I always remember how I found out about my first undergraduate degree was just at one of those like careers expo kind of things, and one thing that I always remember Dad teaching us is that this industry is the greatest industry if you're willing to work hard, and it's the worst industry if you want to be lazy. And I think that kind of ties into that whole sense of ownership, because I even think the education around what being a financial advisor actually is probably needs some work. We know other people who studied it, but they ended up working at a bank or, with an insurance company, where owning your own practice and having those long-term relationships with clients is a very different experience in financial advice to something that's a bit more transactional. So I think, and again, I don't know how this manifests, but people need to understand that, there is that avenue for that long-term relationship with people. It's not like I'm going to be a sales agent where I'm just earning commission, flogging products all the time. It's that, no, people legitimately rely on you for your experience and your expertise. And I think that the only way that more very young people, and I'm talking like, very like entry, school leavers, is to just know about it. No 17-year-old's going to sit down with their dad's financial advisor and find out why it's so amazing to be a financial advisor. It kind of has to be presented to them in a way that they understand, in a way that they think is attainable. Because up until this point, I also think this industry seemed very unattainable. It's like, a risk specialist. I have to know a risk specialist to become a risk specialist. How do I even start that process? There's only 50 of you left. Like, how do I even start,
That's crazy. Actually, that's a really interesting take on it, because we don't actually, as an industry, from the inside out, see the roadblocks that we've actually created ourselves. So,
very true.
Mia, for you, how do we get more of Mias into the industry?
Such a big question. I think for me, a lot of it probably comes down to just, I guess, the general rhetoric around the industry. So we're so used to hearing bad news stories about advisors who have done things unethically or who have made, big, horrible, I guess, mistakes and things like that. But if we actually, I guess, get out to the world, what a positive impact we make in people's lives, I think that would translate. And yeah, I think what Dad said before is a really, really important point, where, you could get all these young people enter the industry, and sure, their product knowledge might be super, super sharp. They might be, the most switched on technical advisor ever. But if they don't have the soft skills and the buy into the industry and a real passion about what we do, then I don't really see it being a lasting career. And I think one thing I love so much about the industry and what we've really, I guess, learned through MDRT is when you do have that passion and that bigger picture purpose behind what you do, people tend to stick in the industry. Like, how many advisors do we know that, you know, started when they were mine and Ben's age and are still, you know, giving so much back to the industry well into their 70s and 80s, maybe.
90s even.
Yeah, so I think it's, not only thinking about how you can help your clients, but also thinking about how you can help the industry and advisors as well. And that's one thing I'd say that we've really observed that doing, is just getting around other advisors and building really supportive networks in that. And I think, you know, when you're in these awesome groups of advisors, it's like the energy just kind of bounces off one another and the passion just grows and grows. Like, I think that's, really, really important.
That's really well said. Very, very good point. I couldn't agree with you more. I think the more that you make it less about yourself and more about the community, the more appeal that we create, and the better the storytelling, you know, because that ultimately, the stories are the things that attract people because they make people feel good.
Yeah, I'd probably, Jenny, can I add one more thing to that?
Sure.
Just in talking to a lot of advisors, it's like, you know, you ask, a common question that you get asked is, oh, what do you do for work? Do you like it? And I can imagine a lot of advisors who are just so, I guess, upset at the industry would probably answer that question and say, I don't like my job. I don't like what I do. It's too stressful. But I think hearing more kind of refreshing answers to that question could probably encourage younger people to get into the industry. Like, when you hear people who are so passionate and enthusiastic about what they do and genuinely really love it, I think that will, just encourage more people to look at it as an awesome career option.
Yeah, which actually leads me to my final question, and I'm going to start with you, Terry. You know, obviously Keyman Insurance is a financial insurance services, I should say, is been around a while, and you've built up a brand, and people know the value of the, you know, the service offering you provide. But one of the probably one of the biggest impressions you ever made on me was a presentation you did at MDRT, and I'm only going to line ball that with an acceptance speech that you gave at an AFA roadshow once, and you spoke with such heart, and you were so humble in your conversation, but you were so open in your experiences that, you know, I remember sitting at both of these occasions and being riveted to my seat. I couldn't take my eyes off, you know, what you were saying in front of me. And, you know, that's not an easy thing to do, I'm going to say. Not everyone can actually do that, but it was the way you delivered that story that made me go, wow, you know, like, this is someone you really want to know about. You know, you need to learn from this man. So is that been a conscious decision of yours? Because it certainly moved me. And I'm pretty sure on the day, particularly at the MDRT meeting, I think it was as you were taking over as state chair, you know, you just had everybody spellbound. Is that something you've learned? Is it something that is just naturally who you are? Share that with me.
Okay, I remember that one. I remember that very clearly because I was so damn nervous. You got to remember with MDRT, some of the people that I look up to in the industry are in MDRT. Like, these people are my heroes, like sporting heroes essentially, but in business. And I guess what I learned was that if I can help people, the best way to do it is to probably tell them the mistakes I made. So why would you go through all the heartache that I went through, making stupid errors and making, you know, just making a mess of things when you don't have to, when all you have to do is learn and listen. And that's why I'm in MDRT. These people have been through all this and made all the mistakes. Why would you do it? Why would you go through that hell when you don't need to? So yeah, I guess I guess what I was talking about, contribution to the industry before. So for me, it's about, you know, the why you're in the business and why the hell do you do all this, and you know, and that I guess that comes out in those talks that I give. You know, the humble experiences, and there's a lot of personalities in this industry, but when you figure out that it's not the Terry Johnson show, it's the life insurance industry show, that changes everything.
Mm-hmm. So your advice, I guess, to anybody that's starting out in, their advice business for the first time is be very, very sure, very, very clear on what your why is.
100%. Do it for the right reason. I mean, it is about money, obviously. That's important, but it's not the sole reason. And you won't be around for long if it's purely based on money. There's too much emotions to do this job properly. There's too much emotional buy-in required. If it's just purely about money,
Yeah,
they'll join you on price and they'll leave you on price, but they'll always stay around if they've got buy-in, if the client's got buy-in with you.
yeah. So I guess to you, Ben and Mia, that you are starting out in financial advice, and I know Mia's got a little bit longer to go, but you literally are working in financial advice and making a difference each day. Ben, if there's one thing that you've learned over this not so long period of time, what would be the bit of advice about just, getting your foot in the door, just understanding, the importance of what you do next? What would be your little bit of advice?
Gosh, that's actually quite a hard question, to be completely honest with you, to just pick one thing. I mean, being involved in
if
MDRT,
you need to give me two.
There's so many, right? I don't actually know if I have a single nugget or anything like that, but I think that one of the things, or the central theme of, this whole discussion, is you have to be so long-term thinking. Dad mentioned this before, you cannot think short-term about anything in this industry. Number one, even to get to the point where you can give advice requires, more than a short-term kind of outlook. But I think, this might be different in a non-family business, but, we have dinner together every night. We go on walks together every night. Our family holidays are together. So it's kind of like, if we're not emotionally invested for the long term in this, our lives are kind of going to be hell, because every day there's a new fire to put out. Premiums are going up like crazy. You've got, death claims, you've got trauma claims. There's so much that goes on that if you can't, like you said, find that why. And I mean, for us, that wasn't a very conscious effort. We didn't sit down and say, all right, guys, what's our why? It happened very naturally. So I think, have a really long-term perspective on, you're here for the long run. It's not going to be a quick cash grab. But also just be as absolutely genuine as possible, and don't try and be genuine, because then you're not being genuine. Just be who you are, and clients will see that, and even people in the industry will see that, and they'll respect you for it.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I think that's very, very wise thinking for a young gentleman.
Oh, well, that's good.
Mia, what do you think? I mean, what's it take for us to, I'm not going into financial advice, but say I was, what would be the thing or things that you feel I should do?
I think, like Ben and Dad both touched on, really everything does come back to your why. And I do feel as though that's probably a little cliche in this day and age, start with your why and things like that. But I think for me, I've always looked at this job not just as a job. It's not just a paycheck. There's actually something so much deeper behind it. And I guess being so passionate about claims, I really, really do believe that claims paid equals lives changed. And it's probably the lives changed part that I try to focus on. And I think if you keep focusing on that bigger picture reason behind why you do what you do, you'll stick around and you'll do your job with more dedication and more passion, and more love for your clients at the end of the day, because that's what it comes down to. And gratitude as well is probably another really big one. Ben and I are so grateful for everything that Keyman has given us. We don't, take it for granted. And, we've been so blessed with such a wonderful upbringing. And we know that a huge part of that is because of Keyman and the work that Dad's put into it. So we really do try to honor that in our work and our efforts and everything. So.
Wow. I tell you what, you've done a wonderful job, Terry Johnson. I think you should be exceptionally proud of these two young adults sitting in front of you.
Thank you.
And if I could just finish with one bit of advice for especially younger advisors, please give advice as if your client is going on claim tomorrow, because it changes everything. It changes the way you give advice, the delivery, your the speed, what's the word?
Everything. It's not even
To
yeah.
get that client actually insured, because that's what it is in the end. It's not just about recommending something and feeling good about the fact you recommend it. It's about getting that client covered. It's serious business. I don't think advisors realize until something goes wrong or they've had experiences where things weren't in place properly. It's devastating. It is a horrible feeling.
I think that it's too easily forgotten that often in financial advice, we have to deal with people at the best of times and at the worst, you know, so, you know, and again, I guess that's that storytelling. So I hope you guys continue to tell your stories, because there's quite the vault there. And I think from a personal brand perspective, Ben and Mia, I've been sitting and watching and superbly impressed with what you're achieving and the work you're doing and the respect that you're garnishing from the people in the community. I think you should be very proud of yourselves. And to Dad, Terry, I think you've mate, I don't know, you at that pivot point, you made the best decision.
Thank God.
Thanks.
Thanks, Jenny. That's so kind. Yeah.
I'm really proud of these kids. They're really doing it all now. So God love them.
Yeah, well, I think we've given everybody a little bit of insight into what it takes to run a family business or to be a family business. I look very much forward to seeing what happens over the coming year. And I'm excited to see these new businesses evolve. And let's learn some more from the Johnson family. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thanks so much, Jenny.
Thanks for all you do for the industry as well. We really very deeply appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, that's the bit I love the most.
Yeah. Thanks, Jen.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much, Jenny.
Thanks for joining us today on Financial Marketing Secrets. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and be sure to follow me, Jenny Pierce, on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, wherever you enjoy joining the conversation. Can't wait to connect with you. I'm looking forward to sharing some more Jenesis Gems with you in the next session of Financial Marketing Secrets. See you then.